Florentino Pérez is reportedly preparing for a major squad overhaul at Real Madrid, with as many as 10 players expected to leave the club during the upcoming summer transfer window. At the same time, Chelsea FC are said to be considering a surprising decision of their own, placing Argentine midfielder Enzo Fernandez on the transfer market. Elsewhere, speculation is growing that Liverpool FC are preparing a £70 million move for a standout star from Crystal Palace FC. Meanwhile, FC Barcelona continue to expand their recruitment plans as they search for new talent to strengthen the squad at Camp Nou. All of that and more forms the focus of today's transfer roundup, where the summer market is already beginning to heat up. One situation attracting particular attention involves Serbian striker Dusan Vlahovic and his uncertain future at Juventus FC. His current contract is set to expire in June, and according to reports the club has quietly accepted that a renewal on his existing terms is unlikely. Italian outlet La Gazzetta dello Sport reports that the club's leadership, led by sporting director Damian Kamali, has decided to postpone negotiations until the end of the season. Even if talks do resume, the offer on the table would reportedly be significantly lower than Vlahovic's current €12 million annual salary. For the striker, that proposal is unlikely to be acceptable, and both sides appear fully aware of it. Officially, the delay in negotiations has been attributed to injury problems. Vlahovic is currently sidelined with yet another muscular issue that is expected to keep him out for at least 3 weeks, giving the club a convenient explanation for putting discussions on hold. Yet when viewed in context, the situation in the season, Vlahovic spent nearly 4 months recovering from an adductor injury. After finally returning, he made a brief substitute appearance against US Sassuolo Calcio before suffering another setback, picking up a calf injury during the warm-up ahead of a match against Genoa CFC. Looking at the sequence of events, rather than a temporary delay. Under current transfer regulations, Vlahovic is already allowed to hold discussions with other clubs and sign a pre-agreement for a free transfer once the summer window opens. In practical terms, that means his future may already lie elsewhere, even if he technically remains on Juventus roster for now. One club monitoring the situation closely is AC Milan, who have strong reasons to pursue a new striker. Manager Massimiliano Allegri has struggled this season with an attack that has failed to deliver the consistency he expected. Forward Christopher Nkunku has not lived up to expectations following his arrival, while Niklas Füllkrug was brought in on loan as a temporary solution and the club has no plans to activate the purchase option from West Ham United FC. As a result, Milan are heading into the summer transfer window with a clear priority: signing a reliable first-choice center-forward. They are not looking for a short-term fix or a backup option, but rather a proven number 9 capable of leading the line. Vlahovic fits that profile perfectly. Allegri previously worked with the Serbian striker in Turin and is already familiar with his playing style, strengths, and tactical role within the team. Financially, the move could also make sense for Milan. If they manage to offload Nkunku and reduce their wage commitments, Vlahovic's salary demands would remain within retransfer. The signing bonus and related costs would also be more manageable compared to a traditional transfer fee. However, one critical question remains unanswered: whether Vlahovic himself views Milan as the right next step in his career, or merely as a backup option after the breakdown of his contract negotiations with Juventus. The difference between those two perspectives could ultimately determine whether serious talks ever take place. Another developing story involves Enzo Fernandez and his future at Chelsea. Interestingly, the momentum behind a possible move to Real Madrid has reportedly been driven less by the Spanish giants and more by Chelsea themselves. According to several reports, the club has begun to believe that keeping an unhappy player in the squad may cause more problems than it solves. The situation escalated after the international break when Fernandez openly spoke about his admiration for the idea of playing in Madrid. The comments were not well received at Stamford Bridge, and Chelsea manager Liam Rosenior responded by suspending the midfielder for 2 matches. The punishment was widely interpreted as a symbolic gesture rather than a severe disciplinary action. Although both sides later met and publicly announced that the issue had been resolved, the relationship between player and club has remained fragile. Ever since that episode, speculation about Fernandez's future has continued to circulate around Stamford Bridge. According to reports from Caught Offside, Chelsea are now willing to listen to offers. From the club's perspective, the reasoning is straightforward. If a top-level midfielder is unhappy and distracted, it risks creating tension within the dressing room and disrupting the team environment. In that context, selling the player, especially if a strong offer arrives, could be seen as the most practical solution for all parties involved. Chelsea FC have now openly acknowledged that Enzo Fernandez is unhappy at the club, and that shift in attitude inside the organization could prove to be the most important development in this entire situation, to force the issue if the player's heart is no longer fully committed to the project. Fernandez represents the type of complete midfielder who can influence both defensive and attacking phases of the game, and players with that balance of qualities are rare commodities in modern football. For a club like Real Madrid, that profile is particularly appealing. Madrid are not simply looking for a midfielder who can produce highlight reel moments or flashy tackles. What they truly need is a player capable of controlling the rhythm of matches, dictating the tempo from deep, and providing stability in the center of the pitch. In many ways, Fernandez fits that description perfectly. As a result, the situation has evolved into a classic transfer triangle. The player is open to leaving, the selling club is willing to consider offers, and the potential buyer has genuine interest. However, as is so often the case in major transfers, one decisive obstacle remains: the price. Chelsea have made it clear they are not prepared to sell Fernandez cheaply. They may be open to negotiations, but only if the offers reflect the value of a player of his caliber. There is also another factor that often gets overlooked in the constant focus on transfer fees: Chelsea's ability to replace him. Without securing a suitable alternative, the club's willingness to sell could easily transform into a cautious stance of, only once we find someone equally capable. Finding a midfielder with Fernandez's complete skill set in a single transfer window is far from simple, and it would almost certainly require spending tens of millions of pounds beyond whatever fee the club receives. Because of that, the potential deal depends not only on the financial terms but also on whether Chelsea's recruitment department can successfully manage two major operations at once: selling a star player and immediately securing a replacement. In transfer sagas like this, patience often proves decisive, and whichever side is willing to wait the longest usually gains the advantage. Meanwhile, another name is generating excitement across Europe: Adam Wharton. The fact that both Real Madrid and Liverpool FC are reportedly interested in the same player says a great deal about how highly the young midfielder is regarded. Last summer, several major European clubs were already monitoring the 22-year-old holding midfielder from Crystal Palace FC, yet he ultimately remained in South London after Palace firmly rejected any approach. Now the situation is beginning to develop again, but this time the stakes are higher. According to Team Talk, Liverpool are pushing aggressively to secure Wharton's signature before Madrid can formalize their move. When two clubs of such stature enter the same race, Palace can no longer simply refuse discussions. Instead, they have reportedly set a clear valuation: around £70 million, a figure that would represent the largest transfer sale in the club's history. From Liverpool's perspective, the interest makes perfect sense. The club, under manager Arne Slot, could finish the season without any major silverware despite significant spending during the previous transfer window. As a result, strengthening the midfield has shifted from being a long-term ambition to an immediate necessity. Several uncertainties within the squad reinforce that need. The future of Alexis Mac Allister has become a topic of speculation, while Curtis Jones could potentially depart. This leaves Liverpool with more than just a minor gap in midfield. It creates a structural imbalance in the team's core. Wharton could address that issue in multiple ways. His defensive awareness and reading of the game are remarkably advanced for someone of his age. At the same time, he is comfortable distributing the ball under pressure and can operate effectively in several central midfield roles. Slot reportedly views him as genuine competition for Ryan Gravenberch in the deeper holding role. That competition could allow the Dutch midfielder to push further forward and contribute more offensively. In other words, Liverpool are not merely attempting to patch a weakness in the squad. They are considering a broader restructuring of their midfield system. Geography rarely determines transfers at this level, but it could still play a subtle role here. Wharton is originally from Blackburn in the northwest of England, and Liverpool may attempt to frame their proposal as a return closer to home. For many players, the idea of playing near familiar surroundings can be appealing. However, when Real Madrid enter the conversation, emotional arguments about home rarely carry the same weight. The Spanish giants have a reputation for presenting opportunities that are difficult for any player to resist. The reported £70 million price tag also highlights the nature of the gamble involved. Wharton has not yet accumulated multiple full seasons at the highest level of European football, meaning the fee represents a bet on future potential rather than an established track record. Crystal Palace FC fully understand that dynamic, which is precisely why they have set the valuation where they have. With Wharton under contract until 2029, Palace possess strong negotiating leverage. They are under no immediate pressure to sell, allowing them to hold firm on their price. Ultimately, the decisive moment will likely arrive during the summer transfer window. The only real question is which club will blink first. At the same time, issues are also emerging elsewhere in Europe. FC Barcelona, for example, conceded goals in every single match of their campaign in the UEFA Champions League this season. That statistic is not simply an unfortunate coincidence. It is a clear sign of deeper defensive problems that the club will need to address moving forward. Although the season is technically still alive for FC Barcelona, the reality inside the club is that attention has already begun shifting toward the future. The La Liga title remains the only major objective still within reach, serving as the final opportunity to salvage a campaign that has otherwise been filled with frustration. Yet behind the scenes, planning for the summer transfer window is already well underway. According to reports from Mundo Deportivo, Barcelona have narrowed their transfer priorities to 4 key signings. The most urgent area of concern is the defense. One of the primary targets identified is Alessandro Bastoni from Inter Milan. What makes this situation particularly interesting is not just the player himself but the reported willingness on his part to consider the move. While the final transfer fee remains uncertain, the direction of the negotiations suggests that Barcelona are seriously exploring the possibility of bringing the Italian defender to Spain. The second priority focuses on strengthening the attack, though the outlook here appears far more complicated. Neither Robert Lewandowski nor Ferran Torres managed to deliver consistently during the decisive stretch of the season. In practical terms, that lack of finishing power has contributed to Barcelona's elimination from several competitions. The club's dream signing for the striker position is Julian Alvarez. However, Barcelona themselves reportedly recognized that completing such a deal would be extremely difficult. Their total transfer budget for the summer is believed to be around €100 million, and signing Alvarez alone could consume the majority of those funds. Because of that limitation, alternative options have emerged, including Alexander Sorloth from Atletico Madrid and Vedat Muriqi from RCD Mallorca. These players represent more affordable solutions, though the contrast between Barcelona's ambitions and their financial constraints is impossible to ignore. The third area Barcelona hope to reinforce is the left wing. Marcus Rashford, who arrived on loan, is expected to depart when his temporary deal expires without a permanent transfer being agreed. As a result, Barcelona are evaluating several alternatives. Internal options from La Masia, such as Daniel Munoz and Jan Virgili, are being considered alongside external candidates like Andreas Schjeldrup of SL Benfica, whose estimated transfer value sits between €30 and €40 million. Perhaps the most intriguing option, however, is a winger from CA Osasuna, who reportedly has a €40 million release clause. The player is described as one of the most versatile candidates on the shortlist. Yet there is a complicated twist in the deal. Real Madrid are said to possess a buyback clause that would allow them to reclaim the player in the future. Such a clause would mean Barcelona investing a significant sum in a player their biggest rivals could potentially take back whenever they choose, a scenario that raises questions about the long-term logic behind the move. Finally, Barcelona must decide what to do about the future of veteran fullback João Cancelo. The Portuguese defender has impressed during his time at the club, and Barcelona have openly expressed their desire to extend his stay. However, his parent club Al Hilal SFC would expect financial compensation for any permanent transfer. In other words, Barcelona may have to pay a significant fee simply to retain a player they initially signed on loan, a situation that reflects how emotional attachment to a particular player can sometimes influence transfer decisions. Altogether, Barcelona's summer strategy revolves around 4 objectives and a relatively limited €100 million budget. It is a wish list where ambition must coexist with financial compromise, and nearly every potential deal carries its own complications. Even though the season has not officially ended, it is already clear that its legacy will likely be remembered as the year that forced Barcelona into a serious rebuilding phase. Meanwhile, their biggest rivals are preparing for major changes of their own. Real Madrid are reportedly planning a significant squad overhaul, one of the largest since the last major restructuring under manager Carlo Ancelotti. Up to 8 players could be placed on the transfer list as the club attempts to reset its squad. The reasons behind this decision are fairly clear. Madrid were eliminated from the UEFA Champions League by FC Bayern Munich and have struggled to keep pace with Barcelona in the La Liga title race as the season approaches its final weeks. When a campaign collapses on multiple fronts simultaneously, the board inevitably begins searching for solutions, and club president Florentino Pérez has never been known for hesitating when major changes appear necessary. Some departures are already expected due to expiring contracts. Players such as David Alaba, Dani Carvajal, and Antonio Rudiger are all approaching the end of their current agreements with uncertain prospects for renewal. In particular, Rudiger's situation has sparked debate, as the German defender continues to show strong form, valuable experience, and physical reliability that could still benefit the team for another season. Another group of players are reportedly being considered for departure simply because they no longer fit into Perez's long-term plans. This category includes Raúl Asensio, Fran Garcia, and Dani Ceballos, all of whom may begin searching for new clubs once the transfer window opens. Midfielder Eduardo Camavinga has also reportedly been made available for transfer, while young prospect Franco Mastantuono is expected to leave temporarily on loan to gain experience elsewhere. At the same time, striker Endrick is scheduled to return from his loan spell at Olympique Lyonnais around the same period. None of these developments have come entirely out of nowhere. The list of potential departures has been quietly building for months, and many observers believe that even more names could eventually be added before the summer transfer window closes. The most obvious weakness in the squad right now lies in defense, and the possibility of losing 3 players from the back line at the same time strongly suggests that Florentino Pérez recognizes the issue as clearly as everyone else. For that reason, Real Madrid are expected to prioritize defensive reinforcements during the upcoming transfer window. Reports indicate the club will bring in at least 1, and possibly 2 new center-backs before the start of next season. Madrid traditionally like to invest in young talent, often signing promising prospects with long-term potential. However, there is also an argument to be made for bringing in a defender who already has significant top-level experience, someone who has proven himself across multiple leagues and high-pressure competitions. In reality, the club has options in both directions, and regardless of which strategy they ultimately choose, Madrid are unlikely to begin the new campaign short of depth in the defensive department. At the same time, changes may not be limited to the playing squad. A managerial shift is also reportedly being prepared behind the scenes. Several media outlets claim that Perez has already decided to dismiss Alvaro Arbeloa after the club's objectives were not met this season. The feeling within the leadership is that the team now requires a more experienced manager, someone capable of managing a dressing room filled with world-class personalities and the enormous expectations that come with coaching Real Madrid. Although no official appointment has been announced, speculation in the media has already produced a short list of potential candidates. Among the names frequently mentioned are Jurgen Klopp, Didier Deschamps, Lionel Scaloni, José Mourinho, and Mauricio Pochettino. Some of these names appear more realistic than others. Pochettino, for example, is often linked with major clubs in the press, but many observers question whether he truly fits the profile Madrid are seeking at this moment. Mourinho's name, meanwhile, inevitably appears in discussions about elite managerial roles. However, his reputation today carries a mix of nostalgia and controversy, and while he certainly understands how to manage star-studded squads, the baggage surrounding his previous tenures may complicate the idea of a return. One candidate who attracts particular attention is Didier Deschamps. His relationship with Perez has reportedly been strong for many years, and his experience managing world-class players is undeniable. As the current manager of the France national football team, he has spent years overseeing a squad filled with elite talents, many of whom share the same level of status and expectation found in the Real Madrid dressing room. Given the significant number of French players already in Madrid's squad, Deschamps would likely feel comfortable within that environment. His resume is equally impressive. Deschamps brings trophies, authority, and a reputation for discipline, qualities that clubs like Real Madrid typically value highly. He is also expected to step down from the French national team position in the near future, with reports suggesting that Zinedine Zidane could take over the role. If that transition happens, Deschamps could soon find himself considering a return to club management. He previously coached major teams such as AS Monaco, Olympique de Marseille, and Juventus FC, experiences that give him a strong foundation at the club level. After years of managing a national team, he would inevitably need some time to readjust to the week-to-week rhythm of club football. Still, among all the candidates currently mentioned, his profile arguably aligns most naturally with what Madrid appear to be searching for. Of course, in discussions involving Real Madrid, there is always one name that has the power to change the entire conversation the moment it appears: Zinedine Zidane. And if his name eventually enters the equation, the entire managerial race could quickly take on a very different shape. Strong foundation at the club level. After years of managing a national team, he would inevitably need some time to readjust to the week-to-week rhythm of club football. Still, among all the candidates currently mentioned, his profile arguably aligns most naturally with what Madrid appear to be searching for. Of course, in discussions involving Real Madrid, there is always one name that has the power to change the entire conversation the moment it appears: Zinedine Zidane. And if his name eventually enters the equation, the entire managerial race could quickly take on a very different shape.